And so for those who think that it's just stuff that's like, do you have passwords? Do you have an antivirus? No.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to episode 363 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims with HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me is Donna Grindle of Cardin. Good afternoon.
Boy, you tried to be pretty ramped up with that one, didn't you? See if you could get me in the mood.
Yeah, I got to overcompensate for you because you're like,
I'm doing better. I went downhill as the day got longer.
Yeah, that tends to happen to old people.
Hey, careful now.
That woke you up, didn't it? Yeah. So speaking of being woke up, how about coming to the Privacy and Security Boot Camp and really get woke up?
Yeah.
Because we have a 3.5-day in-person event, September 12th through the 15th at PriceTagBootcamp.com is where all the details are. We are going to be teaching you how to do bunches of stuff to create a privacy and security program. Things that you know, things that you don't know, things you wish you knew, and maybe some you wish you didn't know.
Things that you'll go, well, I did not know I was supposed to be doing that for the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You don't know what you don't know, but we know what you don't know. So come on by and see us and join us for 3.5 days of exciting privacy and security instruction.
Yep, absolutely. So go to PriceTagBootcamp.com for more, and we will see you there. All right. Now, on to the next. So before we jump into the HIPAA Say What, I do want to say thank you to the donors and thank you to those who are sharing out the podcast. We appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tell
all
people
right.
how awesome it is.
Yeah, I tell them all the time. I mean, I've said this before. I hadn't said it in a while, but we are the only podcast on the planet that has a double your money back guarantee. Just saying. Just saying. You don't like it, we will double your money back. So here we go. Now it's time for the HIPAA.
Say what?
Yeah, so you got a good one here.
Yeah. We won't go into all of the backstory and all the details. The question was, can law enforcement access my medical records? Does HIPAA block that access?
Oh, I know the answer.
Go ahead, David.
Notice I raised my hand.
Yeah, I did.
That is a fact-specific determination.
Yes, as always, it depends. But there is an element in within HIPAA law that says that law enforcement can request certain things in your medical records, but it has to be signed by a judge. It has to be a specific, like, subpoena, search warrant kind of thing. There's a lot of legal mumbo jumbo, but it is possible, but it must be very specific if they do. And the other piece of that is that our recommendations to any provider, which, by the way, a further part of that is I am allowed as an individual, if I am a victim of a crime and I see someone, let's say I see a patient committing the crime, I can say, I know your name, I know their name, and report them to the police. Okay, but all I can tell you is I can't tell you anything about their records. But if I am a witness and I'm asked, did you see the person? Yes, I did. I saw David Sims steal that grocery cart and get in it and ride it down the hill.
By the way, he was late for his appointment today.
So there is that. But again, those are very specific things. And you need to talk with your privacy officer If you are in that position or in, obviously in the middle of a crisis with the cops around and you're in the parking lot watching David ride down the hill, you can say that's David. But if it gets into, a lot of times we get into this debate about whether or not it's a crime. That's not for you to decide. That's not for you to decide at all. You don't get to make those determinations. Law enforcement, the courts, so on and so forth, they get to do that. But we recommend that everybody, even if you do get a subpoena or anything in writing, unless that specifically tells you cannot notify the patient, which I have never seen one, which that would be really, really specific and a very specific case. That would get real tricky. I would always notify the patient that the request has been made and that you plan on following your obligations to allow the patient time to talk to their attorneys, their legal counsel, so that they can get involved if they choose. So it depends, just as David said. It's a fact-specific determination. But it requires very specific legal reasoning and legal documents, and I strongly encourage any healthcare provider to notify their patients should one of those come across their desk, because there's even a case in Connecticut where they didn't notify the patient and the patient got a bunch of money out of the practice. Went all the way to Connecticut Supreme Court, that's all I'm saying. Patient won every time. So we'll leave it at that. It's a very complicated one. It is complicated because it involves the law, and it's the law about the law for the legal lawyers and law stuff. It's a fact-specific determination.
All right. There you go. And now for one that's a little bit easier, talking about the 405D tip of the week.
Yes.
So we are down to practice number 10.
Wow.
Yep. And as we always say, it ain't over till the paperwork is done.
You got to prove it. And I did
practice
hear
number
that
10,
clip, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Did you?
I'd seen it before.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to see what we can do with that. Anyway, practice number 10, cybersecurity policies.
Yeah. Got to write them up.
Yeah, I have fun with a segment we do in our boot camps about the importance of written policies and procedures and why you need them, and show you and have you participate in that process where you get it. What happens if you don't have it written down and it's going person to person? So there you go. You can have at it, David. We don't need to hear my stuffy self read all that.
All right. So for your cybersecurity policies for small organizations, one would be to establish the roles and responsibilities, describe the cybersecurity roles and responsibilities throughout the organization, including who's responsible for implementing security practices and setting the establishing policy. Number 2, instill the education and awareness. So, teach people what they're supposed to be doing. Describe the mechanism, so how they're going to do it, who's going to do it, and then train people on it. Also look at cybersecurity practices, threats, and mitigations. And then lastly, on the small, provide laptop, portable device, and remote use policies. So there you go. If you're asking what kind of policies should I have, there's 3 right there.
Yeah. Describe the policies that relate to mobile device security and how these devices may be used in a remote setting. I love how it says it nicely. But in the opening paragraph, it also points out that the importance of establishing and implementing these policies, procedures, and processes is that it sets expectations and fosters a consistent adoption of behavior by your workforce.
We call that culture.
All right.
And then for your medium and large organizations, you got to do all the small stuff. Plus, you also have to implement acceptable use and email use policies.
Which I think small organizations should probably do these too. I'm just saying.
Yeah, you jumped on that one before I did, but I was going to say that too. Describe the actions that users are permitted and not permitted to take. Explicitly define how emails are to be used. Yeah. So, might want to throw in a 2FA or MFA policy in there too, just saying. Establish incident response and disaster recovery plans. And probably a good idea to make sure you understand what those are. How is your practice going to recover their IT assets in case of a disaster, including the backup plan? I would like, don't call it a backup plan. It should be a recovery plan.
Exactly. I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, disasters happening and you're trying to back up. No, you're trying to recover. Anyway. So lastly, provide guidance on personal device use. You may want to do a social media policy too. Define the organization's position on the use of personal devices, BYOD as it's called. If these are permitted, establish expectations of how the device will be managed. Because if they're not managed, they're mismanaged.
All right, so that gets us through all 10 recommended practices, just in time for the new version of recommended practices to come out later this year. They're only updating it. They're not replacing it. Well, they're replacing it, but they're not making it. They're just making it better. We're making it better. Let's just go.
We'll go over it again.
When it's time, we will take you through it.
Yep. There's been a lot of great feedback from folks.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. All right. Topic of the day.
Yeah. So insurance, cyber insurance specifically. Have you tried to get any lately? Because it's getting tough just to get through the application process.
Yeah, I've been trying to work out a plan to get our friend John Miller back on. He's talked to us multiple times about insurance, and he's always entertaining for us because we're like, wait, what? Whenever we talk to him. But David mentioned last week or a couple of weeks ago how it takes so long to fill out the applications. They used to be easy. So I said, I've heard that from a bunch of people. And I actually had people recently inquiring about our services because they're filling out their insurance application. They're like, we're supposed to be doing a lot of stuff that we're not sure we understand if or what that is.
Yep.
So I pulled a variety of applications and thought, let's go through a few of those.
Yeah. I mean, some of them I've done. I've even had to say, can you get clarification on this question? Because I'm not sure what they're asking.
I know. Some of them are
tough.
Definitely not written for the faint of heart. No. So, of the ones I looked at, some of them are like, okay, we're going to give you insurance coverage, and this policy covers X, and this policy covers Y. Pick which one you want. But others are like, here's this long list of things that you can be covered by. Which ones do you want to be covered by? Which, if you have one that's like, here, just pick, you should use this list.
I know.
To check our notes to make sure so that you know whether or not you're covered. Because, some of it's straightforward. But I love how it's phrased. And like you said, sometimes differently. Like the first two. I mean, granted now, I pulled them from multiple ones and got the phrases and merged them together. But how they're worded matters. So the first one, network security and privacy liability, was on one. And on another one, network and information security liability. So worth asking questions. Communications and media liability. Sounds like social media to me. Regulatory defense expenses, including fines. Might want to double check if that does include it.
Yeah.
Crisis management event expenses. I don't know what that is. Security breach, remediation, and notification expenses, but you better be clear because some of them said specifically victims of breach, identity monitoring. Then you had security event cost Cost for forensics investigation. I love this one. Computer program and electronic data restoration expenses.
Oh, there we go.
All the people that think all you got to do is, if your whole, let's say it's a fairly small business, let's call it 40 computers and a server, right?
Mm-hmm.
How long would it take to have to rebuild that whole network for the computer program and electronic data restoration expense?
I would say more than a few hours.
I mean, but it would be a couple of days, I would expect, at least.
Oh, yeah. At least.
At least. I mean, you're looking at days, not hours, as far as the calculations go.
It depends on, you take that same number and let's say, okay, you're dealing with a small MSP or even an average size MSP, you're still looking at them dedicating probably one resource to you. They're not going to send you their entire team and shut down their business. So, it's as much as one person can get done in a day while you're probably still trying to do business in some form or fashion.
Oh, and to make sure you understand that when you're talking to your MSP.
Yeah.
This assumption that you're just going to be able to bring me 40 computers and get them up and running because you're going to bring your whole staff. No.
Yeah. So I'd say more like a week.
Yeah. For, if you did like a person, maybe intermittently with another one, but yeah. So not cheap.
Mm-mm.
And then you get computer fraud expenses, funds transfer fraud, e-commerce, cyber extortion, ransomware payments, business interruption and additional expense. And I like this one, non-physical business interruption and extra expense. So you got one if like the building catches on fire or something else like that. And then you have one where it's just all stuff that's happening within the computers. It's not impacting the physical devices in any way. It's just that you can't use them. I don't know. That's just my guess if it's non-physical. Loss of digital assets. Didn't we just talk about the leak sites where they... And this one I thought was interesting. Property damage due to cyber event.
Oh, yeah. It's a thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think we'll see more of that over time.
Here's the thing. If you got ransomware and it renders your computer useless, is it damaged?
Is that physical property damage or?
Yeah, technically your software is damaged, even if the hardware is not.
Yep.
And of course, hardware can be damaged.
Yeah, you just wipe the whole thing. What are you going to do? And yeah, there becomes this again is you need to know what you're covered for.
Mm-hmm.
Employee privacy liability. A lot of people forget that you've got payroll data, not just your business data, but payroll data. So if your employees' data is stolen and then released, or information, therefore, somehow released, might have a problem there. I thought this one was interesting. Cyber terrorism coverage.
Yeah.
As we've heard, the acts of war and the other stuff, terrorist attacks, not covered under coverage. Better ask in these worlds.
Because you got all this coverage you think you have, and then they go, oh, wait a minute, that's part of a cyber terrorist act. You got caught up in that, so that's not covered. Sorry.
Yeah, or it's a nation state attack from Russia. So you're not covered in that. That's an act of war.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of variables that you need to make sure whether you're coverage.
No, I like the next one.
Yeah, go ahead and explain that one.
Third-party claims arising out of or alleging financial loss as a result of a failure of the insured's network security or a failure to protect confidential information.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that one.
That's those civil suits, class action suits. Same thing with the third party alleging bodily injury or third party property damage caused by a security failure or privacy event. Okay, we've talked about patient safety issues.
Yeah. If there's insurance for it, that means it's happened.
Well, and we know it's happened, and
Yep.
and the more that people are able to prove it, there's cases we're watching.
Yeah. Or the last one here, third party claims alleging bodily injury or third party property damage caused by a breach of a computer system that's part of an insured product.
Mm-hmm. So, third party is Dr. A's office is having to bring a third party claim against their EHR provider because one of their patients claims that they have a property damage due to what happened with your software. So it's your product. Your product caused the problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to get tricky.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so those are what's covered and kinds of questions and kinds of things that you'll see, but again, that gets down a rabbit hole where John's a lot better at it. But I wanted to point out on these applications, it asks you, so you might want to know.
Yeah, well, you can't just go in and say, I want cyber liability coverage.
Mm-mm.
That's, it's more complicated than that nowadays.
Yeah. And then the ones who have coverage, and we do have cases we've heard of where because of the choices you made while you were covered, your insurance company says, yeah, move along to somebody else. We're not insuring you anymore.
Yeah.
So, or you haven't been insured, or you weren't paying attention that you only had $50,000 worth of coverage, which will last. I don't know. It certainly wouldn't last the week it takes to rebuild all those computers, would it, David?
No.
They ask recent history questions. Have you had a data breach resulting in misappropriation or public disclosure of personal information? Or a claim, suit, inquiry, complaint, notice of charge, notice of hearing, regulatory action, governmental action, or administration action related to the coverage applied for, including but not limited to actions involving libel or slander, privacy rights, plagiarism, piracy, misappropriation of ideas, or infringement of copyright, domain name, trademark, or logo. And then here's the next one though that I saw. I mean, that was pretty good, but this one, and I'm not going to tell you why this one was interesting to me. We'll just assume that it was interesting to me for a reason that I would love to see somebody have to answer this question. Is the applicant president, member of the board of directors, executive officer, general counsel, staff attorney, chief information officer, chief security officer, chief privacy officer, manager, or any individual in a substantially similar position as those previously referenced, or with substantially similar responsibilities as those referenced? So if anybody is remotely in charge in any way, or are you aware of any previous data breach or allegation, fact, circumstance, contention, incident, threat, or situation which may result in a claim, suit, inquiry, complaint, notice of charge, notice of hearing, regulatory action, governmental action, or administrative action related to the coverage applied for, including but not limited to one or more of the actions described above?
Wow. Could you not have some of that that's underprivileged though, where you don't have to talk about it?
They're not saying whether or not what the details are. They're saying, are you aware that there's something already happening and you're not telling us? And anybody that knows it. So you can't say, well, so-and-so knew but didn't tell the CEO, which you always hear. They're like, we don't care.
There's a thing I like called plausible deniability.
And they're saying, no, there will be none. Have you received any claims or complaints with respect to privacy, breach of information, or network security, unauthorized disclosure of information, or defamation or content infringement? Uh-huh.
I can think of a few people I told that they had some of this going on.
Yeah, I've told you. Now, I haven't filed anything. I haven't issued a complaint or any of that stuff, but you've been told. And that's where it gets kind of tricky. You know, been subject to any government action, investigation, subpoena regarding any alleged violation of privacy law or regulation. Alleged. So no, didn't know anything. Have you ever notified customers or any other third party of a data breach incident that you've had? I.e., hey, I did have to tell my clients who all left me, but you're giving me insurance so I can get more clients. You know, have you experienced an actual or attempted extortion? Has it really happened to you? And then this one I thought was super interesting. And I only saw it like on one of them. In the past 3 years, has any service provider with access to your network or computer systems sustained an unscheduled network outage or interruption lasting longer than 4 hours? If yes, did you experience an interruption in business or a result of such outage or interruption?
Wow.
Yeah. So, okay,
so if your EHR goes down for 4 hours, you made the list.
Yeah. So I thought, you know, you're looking at what have you actually experienced, and then you get into all of the protections you have today.
Oh, yeah, these are the fun ones.
Yeah. And so for those who think that it's just stuff that's like, do you have passwords? Do you have an antivirus? No.
Yeah, it used to be that.
Mm-hmm. Now they're asking specific things like, do you collect, store, host, process, control, or use or share any private or sensitive information in either paper or electronic form? And if so, how many records of each? They asked about paper. I thought that was interesting.
Yep.
Does the company maintain a data classification and data governance policy? Well, you know what? We include that when we do policies and procedures, and everybody's like, why do I need this? This is why. This. Does the company maintain documentation that clearly identifies the storage and transmission of all privacy information? When was the company's privacy policy last reviewed?
Ooh.
Bam. Does the company have a formal risk assessment process that identifies critical assets, threats, and vulnerabilities? Okay, so
this is making people squirm.
No, but here's the thing. Have you ever said, well, do you have a formal risk management program? Formal cybersecurity program? And people go, what do you mean by formal?
Define formal.
I've had it. Have you ever had that question? Well, you probably don't have to say formal like I do, but
yeah, no.
Define
I
formal.
think usually I don't have to ask. I know they don't have anything.
Well, see, there you go. There's the thing. But asking if you have a formal program means you have made decisions for business risk management related to privacy and security, maybe. And you can prove you're doing it. But I mean, this is a security risk analysis right there.
Yep.
Disaster recovery and business continuity plan. Do you have an incident response plan? And I like this. All of them ask some versions of those two, right? But this one said an incident response plan for determining the severity of a potential data security breach and providing prompt notification to all individuals who may be adversely affected by such exposures.
Yeah, that's kind of reminds me, that last question kind of reminds me of a client we had that got one of these insurance forms not long ago, and it asked, do you have a disaster recovery plan? and business continuity plan. And so they emailed me and said, "Do we have one of these?" I'm like, "If you're asking me, then no, you don't have one. I wouldn't have your disaster recovery plan."
I do your backup.
I know. It's like, I'm part of what you should have in that plan, but I don't have your plan.
I know people I don't. All right. So then we get into and I love well, here, you hit the third party ones there because there's several in a row.
Mm-hmm. So does the company perform reviews at least annually of the company's third-party service providers to ensure they adhere to company requirements for data protection?
That's what we say you should do.
Does the company conduct security vulnerability assessments to identify and remediate critical security vulnerabilities on the internet or the internal network and the company public websites on the internet?
And so many have their public websites hosted by third parties.
Yeah. So, and one thing I'll say about these, we've talked about this before, but the vulnerability assessments, those vulnerabilities change every single day. So that little one snapshot in time you had is not worth a whole lot.
No.
So you got to have these things ongoing vulnerability. That's why now they're shifting from saying vulnerability assessment to vulnerability management, because it's something you got to continuously do. Next one, does your company perform assessments or audits to ensure that third-party technology providers, hello MSPs, meet company security requirements? And if yes, when's the last time you did it?
Yeah.
Does your company have a formal process for reviewing and approving contracts with third-party technology service providers?
Which is different than the next one.
Are business associate agreements in place for all third-party?
Two different things. Two different ones.
Yep. Now, are they referring to HIPAA business associate agreements?
Yep.
Or just
that one, that was under a healthcare section where it was like, you have my contract for my support, my SLA, whatever you want to call it. And then I have a business associate agreement question.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's vitally important. Is network security outsourced, MSPs, or managed internally? Provide the name of the outsourced company.
Yeah, I thought that one was interesting. If you say outsourced, there were a couple of them that said, give me the name of who you're outsourcing to.
Yeah.
So don't think you're not going down that little rabbit hole with them.
I had one similar to this, and it said that who is it outsourced to? And then it said, who is responsible for your network? And so the person was like, aren't you responsible for your network? I said, no, you're responsible for your network. I said, and you're hiring me to do the work, but you're responsible for making sure that it's happening. You're like, what?
Yeah. I thought I could just walk away.
So, yeah, if it hits the fan, you'll find out quick who's responsible for
it. Yeah. And I liked one where it asked about encryption and all the normal stuff, public network encryption, mobile assets. And they separated mobile assets like laptops, phones, blah, 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 from enterprise assets. And then stored in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do not encrypt any of those, what compensating controls do you have in place? And they give you two options. Saying basically, you better be doing one or both of these.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings in segregation. So for all of those who David and I have had conversations with who say, well, small businesses and small providers will not understand network segregation, it's time that they learn that the segregation of networks is like a basic network requirement now.
Yeah. Well, you can't constantly have the argument that small practices aren't going to understand this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay, if they don't understand it, then they need to be taught it, but you don't just avoid it because they don't understand it.
Right.
To your point, it's time to learn. You're in business. These are the things you need to know to do business in today's world.
At one point, small businesses didn't know you needed antivirus either. That's what we should say.
Oh, there you go. I like that.
Yeah.
But your second option, access control with role-based assignments.
Which,
if you can't do segmentation, you might have a problem with this one too.
I know, but dude, it's like you should be doing both. But I love it that role-based assignment. Yes, we do role-based assignments, but everybody has the same role.
Everybody's admin.
There you go.
Yeah. So, you got a couple different things going on there. You got the access control is one thing, but then with a role-based assignment, taking it to the next level. And we mentioned this last one or this next one we've mentioned before, but how about MFA or 2FA, because it goes back and forth. Do you use it to secure all your cloud service providers that you utilize? Do you use MFA to protect all your local and remote access to your privileged user accounts?
Uh-huh.
So that's an interesting one.
I thought there are several that are very specific multi-factor authentication questions now.
Mm-hmm.
So it is getting, there was like a big chunk of them that was like, where do you use it? All this stuff. I'm like,
Yeah, and the bad thing about it is there are still some cloud providers who don't yet have this. So if you've got one, if you got one of them that's not doing it, you can't say that you use it on all of them.
Yeah.
You just want to mark out all. Yeah. Can I mark out all and put most?
All but one.
Yeah. Or the ones that have it and don't use it. I just had this client who had a breach of an email account, and I said, we have talked about putting MFA in front of your email account for your staff, and you keep saying no. And here we go. Now we're dealing with a data breach. Well, I don't know if it's a data breach yet or not. We haven't got that far down the rabbit hole, but
we'll
it's a breach of their, it's a breach of email account. And even now, when I say, can we do this? Well, let's talk about it because, it's going to be inconvenient. And I'm like, are you serious?
Rule number one.
It floors me. And a lot of it's the same argument that, well, it's complicated because now they got to do this and it's changing the way people do that. And I have a hard enough problem to get them to understand even how to turn a computer on properly. They still think that turning the monitor off and on is rebooting. I'm like, oh my gosh.
That's why you give them a laptop.
Yeah, I guess. But you can't just keep, going back to the whole, they don't understand, so we can't do it.
Well, if they don't understand, then you need somebody else.
Yeah. Either train them or,
replace
take it away
them.
from them.
They got to find another way to do their job.
Yep.
I'm sorry, but this gets down to patient safety and keeping your business up and running today. Okay, so the MFA stuff, it asks you all of that. But as I mentioned, the next three, go ahead, hit those. When I saw those, it's like, do you have a firewall? Do you have antivirus? And then it gets down here into the next stuff.
So, do you use next generation antivirus? And of course, most people don't even know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be like, yeah, I've got antivirus. But it's asking, do you have it? They call it NGAV. Next generation antivirus to protect all endpoints across your enterprise. Not just the ones that are in the four walls of your building. Every one across your enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about what next gen antivirus is. So the biggest difference between antivirus and next gen is that, normal antivirus is looking at things and it's basically using like a dictionary. So if I were to say, Donna, what's the definition of this word? And you look it up and you're like, no, that's not a word. It's not in here. or you look at it and go, yeah, it's a word. That's kind of how it does viruses. It looks through a known set of definitions and it says, okay, yep, this is a virus. No, this is not a virus. So next gen uses a combination of, AI, artificial intelligence, behavioral detection, machine learning algorithms, and then it looks at how all this stuff functions and works, and it tries to anticipate based on all this information as to whether or not this thing looks like a virus or it's acting like a virus would act, and then it treats it like a virus. So it goes beyond just looking at what's known, because definitions are known, but it looks at what is potentially unknown based on all these other factors. So that's what next gen antivirus does.
Yeah, it takes it up a notch.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So do you have that?
But not
question.
always to all the way to the next notch or the one that comes after it, which it didn't ask about.
So the next one is, do you use endpoint detection and response, or EDR, that includes centralized monitoring, hello MSPs, and logging of all endpoint activity across your enterprise? Is EDR deployed on 100% of endpoints? Wow. So the short, easiest way to talk about EDR, endpoint detection and response, is that it's like a integrated, layered approach to your endpoint protection. So it's got real-time continuous monitoring and data analytics, and it's looking at rules for automation so that if this happens, then do this. And it's automated so that you get that immediate response for when something bad happens, and it can do things a lot quicker than we can do it as humans, waiting on something to happen and then looking at it and analyze it and then responding to it. So that's the short of it.
Yeah, instead of going, hey David, there's a problem over here, which is what antivirus does. This goes, David, we've noted a problem and these are the things we're doing about it, but you might want to come follow us.
Yeah. Come check out what we're doing.
There you go. So we got those. So it gets into deeper questions, not just do you have firewall, do you have antivirus, but it starts asking deeper questions on some of these. And can users access the network with their own device? No, just bring your own device. Now, I'm going to do a public service announcement right now. Recently, I learned that because there was a situation with a client and one person was using a laptop owned by the company and the other person was using their personal laptop for work, which, how many people do that?
A lot.
When something happened, that whole fix the laptop and everything. Now, insurance covered the forensics to figure out what went wrong, but insurance does not cover fixing the personal laptop of your employee. Insurance covers fixing the one you own, but your employee, they say, good luck. Off you go now. So if you're saying to your employees, go ahead and use your own stuff so I don't have to buy you one, you better be prepared if something goes wrong that you have to pay to have those computers replaced or repaired.
Or tell the employee, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, my bad.
Should have read the fine print. Yeah, my bad.
My bad. So note that it may cover nothing to do with a staff computer, which would put you in a whole new place.
Mm-hmm.
So all of you who are like, well, we just let everybody use their own personal device, it saves us a ton of money, and in exchange, we quote unquote let them work from home. This could get very hairy. Note to self.
Yeah.
And then one of your favorite topics, RTO. Go ahead. I had to throw that one in there when I saw it.
So this one is, how long does it take to restore? So, everything's went crazy. You lost access to your computers. How long is it going to take? What is your recovery time? And it asks you in increments. Is it going to be 0 to 12 hours? I like how it doesn't say like 0 to 1, 2 to 4. I mean, is it 0 to 12 hours, 12 to 24 hours, or more than 24 hours is it going to take to restore?
And how many people actually know that number?
There are few that know the number, even fewer that's tested the number.
Exactly.
But it is very common in my line of work that people say, we will have you up and running within 15 minutes, or we'll have you up and running within 1 hour. And then you go, well, have you done that? Like, not in general, but for this client, have you tested that? Well, no.
And the other thing is, yes, I can have you up and running, but I have to have the computer to restore things on. I have to have the forensics release the computer to restore things on. So there's a lot more to it than just the restore, which a lot of people, that's all they focus on.
Yeah. And this is a bigger topic and discussion, but this is why you don't pay $69 a year for backup.
Nah.
It's very costly to have this level of backup, but when you need it, you are thankful for every penny you paid for it.
Yeah.
Because you can do those things where you can spin up the backup on a different machine or something like that and have it running in the cloud instance and all that. Again, it means nothing to you until the day you need it. And you're like, whew, I'm glad we paid for that.
Yeah. Well, it's like with what you talked about, $69 a year, you pay for backup, not restore.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You're paying just to put your data somewhere else.
Yeah.
I sometimes talk about the incident where I went into an accounting firm that was not a client at the time, and they are now. And we were talking about their ability to recover, and they're like, oh, no, we pay another company, and it's a few $100s a year to do it. And I'm like, okay, but how much data do you have in the cloud? And they told me, and at the time, it wasn't a lot compared to nowadays. It was like 500 gigs. And what they didn't realize is that it was going to take them, if they downloaded it because of throttling and all the other fine print you don't typically read, it was going to take them 33 days to download their data.
And
33 days.
And they probably didn't have an option to have it shipped to them on a drive either.
Yeah, no, they didn't. At least not at that time they didn't. So we definitely talked them into a better option. And fortunately for them, we did, because 2 weeks later, their server died.
Ouch.
And everything that we said we could do, we had to prove that we could do it. And we did it.
Awesome.
And ever since then, they've been like, I don't care what it costs. I want this kind of backup. Because it kept us functioning for 2 weeks during a busy season. You know, and we had to wait for the server to come in. Even rush delivery, it still took a week for the server to come in, a new server.
Wow.
And so they would have been completely down. But instead, you know, we swooped in and saved the day.
But that's because when you got the client, the first thing you did was address the backup.
Oh, yeah.
So that's good.
All right. So here's an interesting one. And I don't know if you've had this yet, Donna, but I've had people come to me recently and they say, I'm trying to get cybersecurity, trying to get cybersecurity coverage. And the insurance company gave me this document and said, I have to fix this before we can move forward. And I'm like, what? And I look at it and I'm like, well, I'll be doggone. The insurance company did an external vulnerability scan and gives them a report and it says, here's all these problems we found doing an external scan. And you've got to fix those before we even going to talk any further. And I was like, wow, how about that?
Yeah, but why were there so many problems, David?
Because they didn't have anybody doing their stuff.
Yeah, they needed.
They thought they had it.
But you had two cases that we were talking about earlier. One is they came to you because they didn't have anybody fixing it, and now they needed you, which we're seeing, as I brought up. People are coming saying, hey, now they're making me do these things to get coverage. I need to talk to you. But then there was the other problem that you were telling me about.
Oh, yeah. The other problem was that, you know, they came to us and they were talking about the this port and protocol that was open to the public. And I'm like, how is that? There's no way, because there's no server there that runs that protocol and that in that role. I don't understand. And so, you know, I had people that were kind of digging into it. And fortunately, this was early in the process. But I said, can somebody please confirm that it's the right IP address, because something's wrong? And they come back and said, oh, no, they gave them the IP address of the website.
Which is scary in itself. reference our whole discussion on website security, but that meant it wasn't your network they were scanning.
No, not at all. So, and then when they did scan our network, it passed. So I was like, okay, that's more appropriate.
Yeah.
But I couldn't figure out how in the world. The first thing I thought was somebody's unstuck a computer there and opened it up to the internet, and I don't know anything about it. It's in a closet, you know. I was ready to have somebody's head on a platter. You know, I mean, not that employees wouldn't come in and set up their own Wi-Fi access and stuff like that. So it would not shock me that somebody said, "Oh, we can do that. We use this free thing that I do at home. Let me show you."
Yeah, we talked about that, haven't we? All right, well, go with the last little bit there, at the bottom when you sign things.
Yeah. So here's
I just plucked one of them out and kind of modified it, but
yeah,
it's
an entire
interesting.
paragraph. The undersigned authorized representative, and in parentheses it says President, CEO, Chief Information Security Officer, or acceptable to the, ABC insurance company of the applicant declares to the best of his or her knowledge and belief after reasonable inquiry, statements set forth in the attached ABC insurance, new business, or new application for the insurance are true and complete and may be relied upon by the insurance company. If the information in any application changes prior to the inception date of the policy, the applicant will notify the company of such changes, and the company may modify or withdraw any outstanding quotation. The company is authorized to make inquiry in connection with this application.
Yeah.
Da-da-da.
Yeah. You better say that, and that's probably why the prospect that came to me was like, my guy doesn't want to do this. He's like, I'm not signing that. Because a lot of that is outside of their control. So
Yeah. I had the very same thing happen. A person came to me, one of my clients, you need to sign this. It says something about the information security officer. I was like, no. I'm not signing this because I'm filling out section C and you've got section A, B, D, E, F, and G that apply to you. I am not signing this document. I'll sign section C, but not the rest of it.
I will make note I completed this section.
Yeah. So anyway, there you have it, man. I mean, you're trying to get cybersecurity coverage. That's going to be a lot of work, but I am looking forward to getting John on here and talk about this stuff.
Well, I mean, I know I've just, randomly asked when we're at these exhibit halls and talked to the different brokers, and they have cases where claims have been denied because it turns out what you said you were doing, you weren't. Or coverage has been denied because you answer it honestly and they're like, yeah, you're going to need to up your game for us to cover you.
Yeah. Well, that's really what all this boils down to is when you look at this, you should understand that what you were doing a few years ago is no longer acceptable. It's not acceptable under HIPAA. It's not acceptable under your insurance. It's not acceptable to even do business in today's society. So get on the bandwagon. You need to have a privacy and security program. You need to be following frameworks. You need to have your crap together. And the best way to learn how to do this is go to Price 8 Boot Camp in September. So you might as well sign up and see you there.
Well, there you go. David's managed the end of the whole thing.
I bookend that one, didn't I?
Yeah, get it, brother.
All right, folks, that's our show for today. Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us next time. And remember, for Donna and myself, HIPAA's not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.